This is the first workshop in the spring Black Doctoral Network for 2022. I am Dr. Coleman and I will be your moderator. I just want to go over a couple things. There will be a survey link in the chat. If all the participants would go ahead and fill out the survey and provide some feedback for us, so be able to make some improvements, some sustainments, and helps to keep things like this going on for time to come. If you have any questions, just please reserve all your questions until the end, but at any time, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And so that way you don't forget them, and I'll pull them out of the chat. Alternatively, feel free to go ahead and use the raise hand icon, and I will be sure to get to you. Actually, I'll do that. But so today's workshop, we have two presenters. They will speak into us, and the title of the workshop today is Making the Move from Grad Student to the Professoriate. And our first presenter is Miss Lorraine Steinbeiser. Miss Lorraine has been at Rochester Institute of Technology since 2014, where she serves as a Director of Diversity and Recruitment. In that role, she does the creation and execution of campaigns, initiatives, and projects, ensuring the successful faculty diversity and recruitment initiatives are met at the institution. So prior to that, prior to this position, she was also at RIT, and she was a future faculty career exploration program. And she worked with committees that fostered a pipeline for women, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, and scholars that would apply for positions at RIT. Our second presenter also is at RIT, Dr. Jonathan Brown, and he serves as the Provost and Assistant Vice President for Faculty Diversity and Recruitment. In addition to that role, he also is an Associate Professor. He's a former U.S. Fulbright Professor. He was recently appointed as a member of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Climate Justice Working Group. And he's a U.S. Fulbright Scholar alumni. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Steinbeiser.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. As you just mentioned, my name is Lorraine Steinbeiser. I'm with RIT. I've been with this Office of Faculty Diversity and Recruitment here at the institution for just about 8 years, doing a number of different roles within the office. And I'm really excited to speak with you all this morning to talk a little bit more about the faculty recruitment process and cycle, and give you hopefully some insight into search committees and how they think and what they're looking for, and we can have a nice conversation. So thank you for having us. Dr. Brown?
Hello, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jonathan Brown, and I want to thank Dr. Coleman for the introduction, and my colleague Lorraine Steinbeiser as well for joining us this morning. We want to really kind of pull back the curtain, have a conversation about what you can do now to prepare yourself for a career in higher ed, particularly looking at what does it take to make that transition from graduate student into the professoriate. So imagine yourself as a graduate student or a postdoc transitioning to an assistant professor role. We'll go over some of that insight today and provide you as much of a behind the scenes glimpse as we can. But to begin, I'll turn it back over to Lorraine.
All right, thank you. So let me get the presentation up online here. Hopefully everyone can see that. So as mentioned, our presentation is making the move from grad student to the professoriate. So we're specifically looking in our conversations, we'll be talking about the faculty search process in terms of, excuse me, a tenure track role at a college or university. We'll touch a little bit on some other, excuse me, options as you start to think about your faculty your faculty application and going forward. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of what our conversation will be today, I'm just going to give a brief introduction of RIT and our office so you have a little bit more understanding of where we're coming from when we're talking about some of these aspects. We'll talk about what you need to consider before you're applying to faculty positions. We'll dive into crafting your application and what some of those application materials will look like. We'll also touch upon your on-campus interviewing, who you should ask what types of questions to and who you should be meeting with. We'll go over understanding your offer and then how to make that transition to the professoriate and into faculty life, and making sure that you're understanding how you can, be a little bit selfish and make sure that you're staying on target for your role as a faculty member, because you'll certainly be pulled in many different directions. So just about Rochester and the Rochester Institute of Technology, we are located in the western part of New York State. So when we say Rochester, New York, some people just hear New York and think of New York City. We're really, like I said, in the western part of New York State, about an hour and a half to Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and we're actually closer to Toronto, Canada than we are to New York City. There's this map just kind of quickly shows you we are within situated in the northeast section of the United States, and really kind of an easy day drive to a lot of the major metropolitan areas in the Northeast, and just an hour and a half airplane ride to places like Washington, D.C. and Chicago. So RIT, whoops, there we go, RIT. So we are one of the larger institutions here in our region. We were most recently ranked 57th most innovative schools by U.S. News and World Reports. We have $82 million in sponsored research, and over 4,000 faculty and staff are employed here at our institution. We have 19,000 students across our campuses. Our main campus is located here in Rochester, New York, with about 15,000 students, but we do have 5 global campuses that bumps that number of students up. 30% of our student population that self-identify as Asian, Latino, African, or Native American, and 35% of them identify as female. We have the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, which has 1,200 deaf or hard of hearing students, and they're integrated into our main colleges and schools. So it's not uncommon for individuals either working or going to school here to see people signing, doing American Sign Language, and having those types of support systems within the classroom. In the Office of Faculty Diversity and Recruitment, we are really working across the institution to help our faculty searches have a diverse and robust pool. So we are doing programs like this one here, where we're talking about growing the pipeline and talking about trying to give you some insight and information into the faculty search process. We might do campus visits, whether it's virtual or in person, to talk a little bit more about what our campus offers in terms of faculty opportunities, but also trying to give you a little bit of, like I said, insight and some information to help you make a more competitive faculty application, because we certainly want to see you succeed, whether it's here at a position at RIT or somewhere else. We go to conferences. We have a future faculty career exploration program, which I'll talk a little bit more about a little bit later. And then we offer as well virtual programs such as our Pathways to RIT. That's a little bit about kind of the institution and what we do here in our office. And with that being said, we have seen a number of different faculty applications come through, and we've talked obviously and worked closely with search committees. So we have a little bit of an insight and insider's track here as to what the search committees are looking for, what we've seen as some good and some bad things that are on applications. And we'll cover a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. And as Dr. Coleman mentioned, if you have questions about anything we're talking about, feel free to drop them in the chat. We can try to answer them as we go along, and certainly can answer more specifically your questions at the end of the presentation. So the faculty application process is a pretty long process. It takes about a full academic year. So we like to start to have people think about their application before they even get into the job market. So what can you do before you even apply for faculty positions? And one of the things we like to make sure people understand is, what are your career goals and what are you looking to do? So are you looking to be at a community college? Are you looking for a research intensive institution, maybe a liberal arts, small setting, big city? These are all sorts of things you kind of need to think about so you can narrow your focus as you're going out on the job market. If you want to have a teaching position, you certainly don't want to be applying to an R1 institution for a research intensive position. If you're looking for something where you're going to have smaller class sizes, you might want to go to a smaller institution. So that just understanding a little bit more about what are your career goals, and those are some really introspective types of questions you need to ask yourself. But as you're going through that, and you're in your about a year or so from being on the job market, this is the time for you to gain some experience too, because you want to understand what it is that you're interested in doing. Is that teaching? Is it research? Does public speaking make you nervous and afraid? So if it is, maybe you want to get some experience in presenting and being a TA in teaching, so that you have a better understanding of what that would entail. So certainly trying to gain some experience and also gain some professional development. There are a number of types of programs that different institutions offer, or different associations that you may belong to offer in terms of professional development. And those could be programs. We offer one here at RIT called the Future Faculty Career Exploration Program. It's a 4-day immersive program that gives you a behind-the-scenes glimpse into life as a faculty member. I know there's other institutions that offer similar types of programs, but these are types of professional development where you're going to be able to gain experience in presenting your research, you perhaps leading a class, doing interview skills, and getting a better understanding of where you might fit into a particular role within an institution, or just in the grander higher education realm. So certainly take advantage of any types of professional development opportunities that may come your way. This workshop is another great one. And so are the other slates of workshops that are going to be presented later through BDN. But they're great opportunities for you to again, just have a better understanding of what it is you need to work on if you want to be successful in certain roles, and what you can add to your resume, your CV. So in addition, you want to take a look at doing some publications and perhaps even submitting for some grants. Even though you're still maybe early on in your career, these are opportunities for you to have some experience and some substance on your CV, so that when you do go to apply for positions, faculty that are reviewing those applications can see, oh, look, they've taken the initiative to already start to try to write some articles, get into different publications, and just shows that initiative. That shows where your research is headed and where your potential might be. And another thing I always like to talk about is to brand yourself. Never too early to start thinking about branding yourself, creating an online online profiles. If you're on social media, make sure those are up to date. As a recruiter, these are things I look for when I'm trying to get in touch with individuals that I'm sourcing for a particular position. I spend a lot of time online trying to find individuals, and if I can't find how to contact you, then I can't reach out about a position for you. So certainly if you have an online profile, even if it's just LinkedIn, make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Make sure you have contact information on there. Make sure your CV is up to date and someone can download it if they want to, because then they're able to share that information across to other faculty search committees members. So I think it's very important for you to create some sort of online profile. And again, you don't need to know how to create a website, but if you do have a website, it's a great opportunity for you to put your publications down, to be more in depth about and provide links to different projects or research that you've done, labs that you've worked in, and so forth. And then lastly, networking, at workshops like this, at conferences, at different venues. Get in touch with individuals who may be either potential collaborators down the road for your research, or may be able to use as someone to get you inside information about what's going on at a particular campus. So certainly networking, whether you're going into a faculty role or it's going to be on the professional side, staff role, you can never get away from networking with individuals. You never know when you're going to want to be able to reach out to someone at a different organization or institution and be able to bounce ideas and questions off of. So certainly start to build up that network for yourself, and thinking, of course, about what you're going to be wanting to do in the next year or so when you're applying for faculty roles. So as you're starting to get into the actual the job market, you're going to want to start thinking about how you can craft your application and how you can create the documents that you're going to need for your application. At a minimum, you're going to be required to submit a cover letter and a CV for any job application, any job that you're applying to. But there might also be additional documents that will be needed for the search committees to do their review. So as you're crafting your application documents, there's a couple things we always suggest that you take a look at. To consult the strategic plan, know your institutional audience, and try to be as clear as possible as you're crafting your application documents. So when I say consult the strategic plan, every institution is going to have online somewhere on their website a copy of their strategic plan, and that gives you insight as to where the institution is going. Where are they seeing potential growth? So where would they need faculty members, and what fields and what disciplines? Where are they trying to shore up potentially their opportunities for this growth, and where are they investing their funds in? So you're going to find all this information laid out in the strategic plan. You just have to read through it and have an understanding of what it is they're talking about. But institutional websites offer so much information that you can find that you don't need to be, you won't hit a firewall with. This is all usually public information about their strategic plan, and it helps you in understanding where your potential fit might be. When we talk about knowing your institutional audience, it's really like when you go to craft your cover letter, you need to know, are you applying for a teaching role? Then you're going to talk more in your cover letter about your teaching experience. If you're going for a research position, you want to be able to talk more about your research, potential funding opportunities that you have, or potential funding opportunities that you see in the future. So those are, understanding what it is that the audience that you're applying to would be looking for. And it's not always easy, but it's best if you can craft your cover letter specific to that institution and specific to that position. And I say that because I have seen, and I know Donathan has seen as well, just generalized cover letters that go out. They have the wrong institution on them. They have the wrong position listed in there. So it's someone who's just blanketly applying to all sorts of different positions and not really taking a look at what the position description is, what the institution is looking for. So I say, really know your institutional audience and craft your cover letter to that audience, and try to address maybe some points in the strategic plan, but also take a really hard look at what are they asking for in the position description, and how does your experience relate to that position description. So you want to make that connection for the search committees so that they don't have to guess. You take that guesswork out of them. That's when we say ambiguity is not your friend. Be direct, make sure your cover letter is correct and up to date. Your CV, we're in 2022 now. I can't tell you the number of CVs I've seen that have come through this spring that say expected graduation date, May 2021. And they're applying for a position in 2022. So you're keeping me guessing. Did you really graduate? Did you not? Are you expecting to graduate this year? Like where are you in your journey? And does it make sense for you to be submitting this application because you haven't updated your CV? I've also seen CVs where there's no recent experience or dates on the CV. May have been the last thing, it looks like it was updated in 2018, is what I just saw the other day. So I wonder, is this an old CV? Did they give me the wrong information? Should I be looking for something more? Do I need to reach out to them? But I say that because as a search committee member, we're getting hundreds of applications in for these positions. And if yours is kind of leaving question marks in their mind, they may not have an opportunity to go back to you to ask for clarification. And they shouldn't have to. You should be providing them with the information that is relevant and current and up to date for them to make a decision, an informed decision as to whether or not you'll be advancing into the interview pool. So that's kind of, like I said, all the information when you're thinking about applying for positions as you start to craft your application materials. And the other application materials, and I'll let Jonathan cover this in more detail, are the research, diversity, and teaching statements. And those are usually required by the search committees. They may not be asked for at the application, but they will certainly be asked for at some time point throughout the interview process. So Jonathan, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. I really hope everyone is paying attention to this slide in particular. As a faculty member, as well as an administrator, I can tell you directly, looking right into the camera, that this is where most faculty applications fall off the map. Think about it for a moment. You don't know the institution in which you're applying to, and it shows, whether or not these are just somewhat simple typographical errors or otherwise. This is where two things typically happen. One, your file is placed to the side to quote unquote come back to later. I can tell you in many experiences that may or may not happen. You could be simply disqualified for the sake of ambiguity. But second, I think one of the key takeaways, and perhaps most important, is think about it from the perspective of the committee. At no point should a deliberation about your file be likened to a murder mystery novel. We're searching for clues and details as we flip through your cover letter, your CV, and really asking the question, well, what happened when? Who did what, why, and how? And this can go for a variety of different reasons. So with respect to the remaining bullet points on this slide, I'll briefly touch upon the research, diversity, and teaching statements. Now, regardless of whether or not you're looking at a liberal arts college, a Research 1 institution, or Research 2, a comprehensive institution, or otherwise, these are three statements that are becoming more and more part of the required dossier. Your research statement. Well, quite frankly, it is an opportunity for you to do two things. One, define your research area of expertise. Oftentimes, search committees are simply looking as to whether or not you can clearly define and articulate your area of expertise, part one. And part two is really focusing on the development of your research portfolio. In other words, the research statement is a time for you to talk about your research arc, insofar as where you are today and where you see your research going over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, no one's going to hold you to that once you do have the job. But again, it's a level of maturity that search committees are looking for as to whether or not you can articulate where you see the vision of your research going over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, also, this is critically important when we talk about tenure and promotion as well. Do you have a research portfolio in mind that would get you across the finish line of being tenured and promoted? And so the research statement typically is an opportunity for you to really flex not only your research expertise and interests, but your portfolio and your vision writ large. And second, diversity statement. Now, oftentimes this is done in two ways. First and foremost, you can find yourself in a situation where universities are asking you to respond to a prompt that is designed by the search committee. In that sense, typically, you will only have about 1 page or so to respond to the prompt. In others, there would be more open-ended responses sought, meaning how do you or your values, your experiences align with our strategic goals in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And it really calls you to think about this response more holistically. It calls for you to take a deeper look into the university and see what our goals are, see what our mission is in this space, and it gives you an opportunity to reflect accordingly. Third and finally, the teaching statement. Again, another critical statement that a lot of people falter. So let me try to be as clear as possible to help anyone out who may be on the job market or soon will be. The teaching statement is really an opportunity for you to describe what moves and instructs your methodology for engaging students within the classroom. In other words, what is your teaching philosophy? Think about that for a moment and think about ways in which you materialize your philosophy and be prepared to provide examples of such. In addition, a teaching statement is an opportunity for you to also talk about your experiences within the classroom. And don't shy away from talking about teaching awards you may have received, empirical data pertaining to your teaching evaluations, or other sorts of indicators that would otherwise favor on the side of teaching excellence. Again, this is an opportunity for you to really showcase who you are. So again, just remember, it's not only your teaching philosophy and how well you can articulate what moves and instructs you in the classroom, but also think about examples that would sustain that philosophy. So student evaluations, think about sharing that empirical data, but also the qualitative data as well that may come from your student evaluations as well. The next slide, please. Great. So you've made it, and now you're on campus engaging in the campus interview. And at this moment in time, there are a lot of questions that should be running through your mind. Most often, who to ask what? And if we think about it in that expression, here's where we try to delineate a little cheat sheet as to who you can ask what. And since you're on campus, this will get fairly easy to do. Now, we always recommend starting with the department chair. That's typically the first point of contact you'll have on a campus visit. And there are a lot of things in which we would certainly encourage you to ask, and as you can see here. I'm not going to go through everything listed here on the department chair nor the dean, but I will make 2 points about the department chair. First and foremost, please, please, please obtain any and all tenure and promotion guidelines in writing. Right? The idea, of course, is know before you go. Perhaps you may have had this already in your possession, but if not, it's a great opportunity for you to learn more. Because here is where I would truly say that it is largely upon you to know yourself. If you see that the tenure and promotion guidelines require heavy research, is this an environment you see yourself thriving within? Do you see yourself more on the side of teaching over research or vice versa? These tenure and promotion guidelines will provide you a very clear understanding of what they define as excellence and what is tenurable at that institution. In addition to the tenure and promotion guidelines, take a look at the annual and mid-search, not the mid-search, I always do that. When we think about the annual and mid-tenure review, is an opportunity to see how you will be evaluated year after year and right up to the mid-tenure point as well. What is the institution looking for? What are some of the markers that indicate that you are on the path for tenure and promotion? So again, all things to have in writing, either before, preferably, or if not, while you are on campus. Let's switch over to the dean for a moment. Chances are you'll have an opportunity to speak with the dean during your time on campus, and here are some of the questions in which we would certainly recommend that you engage. Now, for the purposes of our conversation today, it is always best, and I'll start at the bottom here, to get the dean's perspective on what they feel and believe makes a solid tenure and promotion case. Because once your file leaves the hands of the department, it will land up with the dean. And you want to ensure that you have a very good understanding as to how they view and how they read tenure and promotion dossiers. So always take that moment to do so. Finally, on this side here with the deans, think about strategic plan related questions. And here's what I mean by that. As you can see on some of the bullet points even above this, think about the way in which the strategic plan may call out for certain growth or development in the particular college in which you're interviewing within, whether it's the creation of a new major, a new minor, growth in certain areas, whatever the case may be. This would be a prime opportunity for you to engage the dean on a higher strategic level about where they see their college moving in the next 3 to 5 years, or sometimes even sooner than that. We wanted to really provide this opportunity for you to take a look at some of the questions you should ask, most certainly, and who to ask during your campus visit. Next slide, please. Great. So you've jumped through another hurdle and find yourself at the glorious stage of receiving an offer letter. Congratulations, kick your feet up, pat yourself on the back, because this is a joyful occasion above all. I don't think we celebrate this enough. So if you haven't this is a great moment in time. So now you got past the overall joy of receiving the letter. Let's be a little strategic about our approach to looking and adjudicating offer letters. As you can see here, we have several bullet points that kind of guide you along the way. Salary and contract date, obviously, these are some of the basics. Relocation amount and method. Good question, good point. Is the relocation amount enough? If you're moving from Los Angeles here to Rochester, New York, think about the cost that may incur. And by method, we simply mean this. Is this reimbursed funds, or will these funds be distributed prior to your departure? Important questions to ask, nonetheless. Professional development funds are always important to think about, and this could mean a variety of things in addition to startup funds, whether or not that's lab equipment, software, professional development by way of attending conferences, among other areas. These are all things to think about and really think about and know your needs. What do you foresee as your needs in the coming future? Lab and office space, summer salary, negotiating a research assistant in that as well. So a lot of things to consider here, but let me just say a little word of advice here for those of you who are on the market right now and maybe at this stage now. While most people go for the salary, and we can all understand why, think about what other variables can really fill out your offer letter as well. Because salaries are taxed, and we need to think about dollars that may not be taxed. Think about professional development funds. Think about research funds that sit in a different account outside of your salary that can be tapped at different moments in time. I think the offer letter is a true testament of knowing yourself and knowing yourself well. And just remember, as you continue to work through the offer letter, if you remember nothing else, let it be this. This is the only time in which you will possess the amount of leverage you do to negotiate successfully the terms of your transition to a university. Okay? Keep that in mind always, because this is an opportunity for you to advocate for yourself in a manner in which meets your needs. And so we always want to ensure that we provide a little bit of insight as you begin to review the cover, or not the cover letter, but the offer letter, to ensure that it meets the needs of you today, tomorrow, but also think about it in the years ahead as well. Next slide, please. Great. So you got the offer. We're done. Congratulations. Everything worked out to your advantage. You used your leverage in a manner that is very productive. Now it's time to get to work. This is where the real work begins. You've proven yourself to everyone. Now let's transition just one more time. Well, frankly, it'll be more than one, but for the purpose of this conversation, one more time. So here are some key pillars of advice we love to give individuals who are making that transition from graduate student to faculty. First and foremost, learn to say no. You can do it with me now. You can do it with yourself later, over the weekend. But the first thing, obviously, is to learn to say no. The reason is that, well, you're the newest faculty member on the team. And sometimes, not always, sometimes you will be saddled with service requests. Will you serve on this committee, that committee, whatever the case may be? Think about your needs first. Put yourself first, because others are. So it's time for you to do the same. And by doing so, the first step is to learning to say no. Second, as we discussed before, knowing the rules of engagement. And by this, we simply mean understanding the tenure and promotion process and requirements. We spoke a little bit about this before, so I think I don't say much to this. Third is really the importance of identifying mentors. Think about how invaluable an outside counsel would be as you begin to navigate your first semester, your first year, your mid-tenure review, and beyond. Here's a great example that will really combine the importance of identifying mentors and the last bullet point of easy does it. You're in your first semester on a new college campus in the new town, in the new city, in a new state. Is it really wise to offer 3 new courses your first semester? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so the importance of identifying mentors is that individuals begin to share some insight as to how you can make the most of your time while allowing yourself the space and opportunity to engage your research. Because as some of us hate to hear, but it's simply the reality of the case, in many institutions, it's publish or perish. And so we need to ensure that you have the protected space and time for you to flourish in a manner that results in publishable material. And of course, above all, easy does it. Balance teaching, service, and scholarship. As we touched upon before, oftentimes service can suck the life out of you. But at the end of the day, service only gets you so far in the annual or mid-tenure review. Think about ways in which you can capitalize off teaching. Think about ways in which your teaching can lead to scholarship and vice versa. Think about that in a strategic manner that suits your needs best, but also is responsive to the needs of the department as well. So again, it's really a balancing act that can be best discussed by having mentors who've been there, done that, and can provide you insight and advice to move forward. Next slide, please. Great. So we're a fairly interactive office. If you can't tell, we really are. And we want you to stay connected with us. Take a look at the opportunities here on your screen to connect with us via Twitter. We'll certainly post any and all events in which we're attending or speaking at so we can engage in person as we would like. But also, just as important as our Scholars Network, the QR code below really provides you an opportunity to join our Scholars Network. And what that simply is that it is our internal mechanism for you to receive discipline-specific faculty and fellowship opportunities and announcements here at RIT. So for example, if your area is clinical psychology, engineering, technology, whatever the case may be, we will send you discipline-specific faculty and fellowship opportunities to you and invite you to engage with our office if you have questions or are interested in pursuing the role further. We look at this as relationship building. Just as the same manner we encourage you to network, we do the same by taking our own advice. We want to network with you today, tomorrow, thereafter. We're still in conversation with folks we met years ago who are already tenured and doing excellent things at different universities around the country. So we provide that opportunity for you as well. So we do have a little bit of time left. Lorraine, is there anything you would like to add to this before we pause for Q&A?
No, I think we can, want to launch right into the Q&A. I know there's some questions that have come up in the chat, so I will make sure we have enough time to answer those. I'm just going to close out of the presentation so we can kind of see everyone on the screen a little bit better.
Absolutely, we do have some couple questions that were put in the chat. Prior to getting to the question, Ms. Steinbeiser, I have your email address. Is it okay if I drop it in the chat?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. I think Dr. Brown was hiding his email address from me, so.
No, why would I do that? It's my first dot last name. I'll put it in the chat box. How about that?
Okay. And for everyone, I just put Ms. Steinbeiser's email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to her and contact her. The first question that we had was from Ms. Davis Williams, and I think it was more of a foundational question. You kind of touched on it already. But what she wants to know is, how does publishing in journals, et cetera, help you to determine for like faculties a new application? What weight does it hold to be published prior to, or on your way to being published when you submit your application?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really wonderful question. So thank you for posing that. I always look at it this way. your application is never the first and only one a committee will review. So the question for you is, what makes that compelling narrative for me as a search committee member, a search committee chair, to invite you to go further along into the process? And one of the ways in which we can do that is simply looking at publications, quite frankly, looking at the way in which you've matured and developed your career. So publications can really assist you in standing out, but it also shows that you have the academic promise that will get you and do you well in our department, not just today, but as you continue forward in your career for tenure and promotion and beyond.
And I'll just add to that too. If you are still within your program and you haven't yet completed, you haven't yet graduated, you may not have a whole lot of opportunity to have anything published, right? You might be a co-author on something with maybe your faculty advisor. You might have some things that are submitted but not yet published. And those are still things you're going to put on your CV because, again, it shows that you have the initiative and that you have some solid foundation of your research to go into publication. So, you know, it certainly adds value to your CV, even if, like I said, even if it's just works in progress versus something that's actually been published. And it also a little bit more, I think, to Natasha's point, it also depends on what your field of study is. So if you are in the STEM fields, and you know you're going after a tenure track position, having some articles published is going to certainly weigh a little bit more heavier than maybe if you are going after a position that maybe is a teaching position. So it's a little situational as well. So, but it certainly isn't, if you don't have it, there are ways to kind of, I guess, almost work around it or show that you have different aspects and you can add more value in other parts of your CV. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, Ms. Davis-Williams, I hope that answers your question. If not, then go ahead and put it in the chat, any follow-up. There was another question from Dr. Nesbitt. She wants to know how do you gain this teaching experience in order to get into an institution? Like where do you start? Do you start teaching GED courses? Do you start teaching at an adjunct position online? Like how does one go about stepping into one of these positions?
Yeah. So teaching experience can be garnered in a variety of ways. Most common path is by individuals in their graduate program serving as teaching assistants or graduate assistants that provides them that foundational experience. Oftentimes, we're not necessarily looking for, particularly in the early career stages, for you to be the instructor of record, but just to have the experience of engaging students in that manner. We've had some individuals who've taught high school. We've had some individuals who served as graduate assistants, teaching assistants, research assistants, and beyond. I think it's really looking for those opportunities. And if they don't necessarily readily exist, ask. Because oftentimes I look at some programs don't provide that opportunity. And we certainly have seen applicants who come from departments and universities that don't provide that for them at all. But it's really kind of that explorative phase where I would simply say, if you have the opportunity to TA, take it, do it. Because again, this is another area in which you can kind of separate yourself from the rest of the application pile. But Lorraine, if you have any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I would say if you're not still within your program, if you've already graduated and you're trying to gain some teaching experience, certainly I think adjuncting is one way to do that. And on your CV, it would certainly put the types of courses that you have either taught or can teach. So it just tries to help the search committees understand a little bit more about where you might fit into what their needs are. So instead of making them guess just based upon some of the information that's found within your CV, you could spell it out, the types of courses that you feel you're capable of teaching. And then certainly if you've adjunct, if you actually have been able to teach some of those courses, you can list those out as well. Certainly it helps if they're relevant to the field that you want to get into. So that's another kind of, if you're I think your question asks about GED courses. If that's relevant to the field you want to obtain a faculty position in, then certainly that would be one way to go about it. But for example, if you're, a bioengineer, teaching the GED course may not be relevant to your teaching experience as a bioengineer. Just think about it in that term as well.
All right, Dr. Nesbitt, I hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to put a follow-up in the chat, take yourself off mute, ask your question. So I do have another question for you. What is how does a new graduate go about finding these positions? Is it, they're just not on your career? I mean, there's many universities out there. What advice would you give a student on where to go to find some of these opportunities?
So one of the places that we, excuse me, as an institution, advertise all of our staff and faculty positions is higheredjobs.com. And certainly you can go there, you can create different search tools as a potential candidate to take a look at all the positions that are announced. But there are a number of different kinds of job boards. Certainly a lot of the associations, even BDN, I believe, has a job board. So, colleges are not just posting on their own website. They're actively out there posting positions to some of the larger job boards. Ours even go out to just indeed.com. So, certainly if you want to look more specifically at some of the higher ed types of job boards, for us in our region, that certainly is higheredjobs.com. Then there's, I'm trying to think which other ones we do. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, you can always take a look at the Chronicle. The Chronicle has a job bank. Inside Higher Ed has a job bank. Higheredjobs.com has a job bank. And these are all aggregator sites. Even LinkedIn is getting into the business. I wouldn't trust it wholeheartedly, but I think it is a good place to look. But there are a variety of places. And so those are perhaps the three most populated sites where you'll find a majority of opportunities.
One more question. As a student or graduate is preparing to look into jobs higher ed, what can you tell them realistically? Because everybody has a different expectation on the process and how long it takes. So realistically, how long does the process take from submitting my application to actually being hired and start teaching?
Here at RIT, it's almost a full academic year. Positions are typically posted, the typical cycle here at our institution is positions are posted sometime maybe August, September into October. First round of interviews will happen either at the end of the fall semester, so you're talking December, or maybe early spring semester, so December, January. On-campus visits are being conducted right now. We just had a couple of them come through this week and last week. So we always think we're a little late in our cycle. We hear other people getting their job offers earlier on, but that's kind of the cycle. Those first round of interviews will happen December, January. Second round on-campus interviews will happen usually in April, with offer letters going out in May for that individual to start in August. So it does take some time.
Okay, fall semester. So recruit, interview in fall for following fall, but you guys go through the spring sometimes too.
Yeah, the interviewing process actually happens in the spring. So applications are collected and initial reviews are done in the fall. And then the interviews happen in the spring with the offers going out, like I said, sometime in May for an August start date.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. Dr. Brown did post a link in the chat for the Scholars Network if any of the participants want to take that information. If there's no further questions, I would just like to thank Ms. Steinbeiser and Dr. Brown on behalf of the Black Doctoral Network, for your time and the information that you provided. And I will be reaching out to you soon to ask maybe some follow-up questions. And of course, pass your information around as needed. So once again, thank you. And it's been very helpful.
All right.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all.
Indeed.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.